Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
In my association with Project Group, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them was on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
On origin? Okay, yesterday you told us you traveled, thousands of light years to get
1947. Two craft crashed into Mexico. They collided, and one crashed near Corona, New Mexico, which is public record. The second craft crashed way out west of Magdalena, New Mexico, and that wasn't found until 2 years later. But the one that crashed in Corona, they also found a live alien. That live alien was named Eva, and he was transported to, it was a male, was transported to Los Alamos, where he lived out his life. He died in 1952. During that time period that he was with us, he told us a plethora of information about what they have learned about the universe.
They want to keep people away from a real truth.
Back in the early 80s, it was my job to confuse the UFO community. And it was very easy to convince Paul. Paul was a World War II veteran. He's very patriotic. He always flew his flag. Those type of people you can convince that, listen, you can't tell anybody else about this because this, you could get in the wrong hands.
Would we use perception to help shroud what we're trying to protect? Absolutely. If you've got an aerial platform that is highly advanced and the public who happens to get a glimpse of the thing, if they're convinced that it's from Venus and there's no way it could be our military, well, hey, that's awesome. Hell yes.
Roswell was not the beginning. It was a turning point.
We just dropped 2 bombs on a country. We had a test. This probably was observed by these aliens somewhere, whether they were doing reconnaissance back then or how they had figured it out. So they came here to observe, try to figure out what the heck was that.
All right, guys, welcome back to Total Disclosure, the podcast. I am here today, your host, Ty, and this is the show that I have been waiting for since I started Total Disclosure, to be honest. This man, I've not only looked up to, but I've paid close attention to his story, and that is Richard Doty. Richard Doty was born in New York State and grew up in a military family. Richard served his country in the U.S. Air Force. Richard attended college at Pacific Lutheran University, and after college, Richard was hired by the Air Force Office of Special Investigation. After attending intelligence courses taught by the AFOIS, Defense Intelligence Agency, and CIA, Richard served at Kirkland Air Force Base as a counterintelligence officer. Richard saw duty at Nevada Test Site, Air Force Center, Detachment 3, Groom Lake, which people know as Area 51, Nevada. So that's in Nevada. Richard investigated at the Coyote Canyon UFO sighting on Kirtland Air Force Base and the Paul Benowitz incident, which many of us know from the amazing documentary Mirage Men. Richard was also assigned to the AFOSI European headquarters Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm German, so if I just got that wrong, I'm gonna get slapped by my mother in spirit. So, as a counter-espionage agent, after leaving the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, Richard was assigned to an Air Force Reserve unit. Richard left Air Force Office of Special Investigation and was employed by the state of New Mexico. Wink, wink. Richard worked for the Institute of Advanced Studies, which was directed by Dr. Hal Puthoff. In 2017, Richard was hired by Gaia, where he currently has over 100 episodes on Cosmic Disclosure with Avery Smith. It is my absolute honor, my pleasure to finally introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Richard Doty.
Well, thank you for that introduction,
Wow.
Tyler. I appreciate that.
Yeah, wow. What an introduction. And I mean, first I want to say, of course, thank you to all the service that you did, in your time in the military and areas attached to it. So we always start off by saying thank you to our military veterans and our people like you. But what I find fascinating about you is that you admit that you sowed disinformation. That was your job as counterintelligence, right? You openly admit it, but you're now in the community trying to kind of shed some light on some of the things that are going on. And I'd be fascinated to hear about, what you have to think about with the Grush situation. But first, I want to talk about the origins of Richard Doty. Richard Doty, as he was hired of OSI, and I want to run through the Paul Benowitz case for anyone in our audience who doesn't understand or doesn't know about that case and how it got misconstrued.
Okay, I was a counterintelligence officer at Kirtland Air Force Base, and Paul Benowitz lived just outside the base perimeter in an area called Four Hills, just outside, just right on the perimeter. And so he could see into the base from his backyard or his patio. And on various occasions, he saw some strange things flying around at Kirtland. They were always next to an airplane, and he then took pictures of them, did some electronic recording of signals coming from these objects. Right, and eventually he approached the chief of security police at Manzano Base, Lieutenant Colonel Ernie Edwards. Now, Manzano Base was a base within Kirtland Air Force Base. It housed nuclear weapons. It stored the most nuclear weapons in the world there, underground or in bunkers. And so when Paul brought this to the attention of these objects, attention of Lieutenant Colonel Ernie Edwards, who was again the chief of security police for that mountain, he immediately, Lieutenant Colonel Edwards immediately notified me and told me that this guy had come to his office and told him about this, about these objects flying around and some signals that he was detecting from the area of Manzano. So my job as a counterintelligence officer to investigate this. And
yeah,
so
of course.
I made an appointment with Paul Benowitz. We did a check on Paul, found out that he was a Air Force or a contractor, a private contractor. He had government contracts with the Air Force. He owned a company called Thunder Scientific Laboratories, which was just outside Kirtland Air Force Base. So I made an appointment. I went out and talked to Paul at his office with another agent. And Paul told me that he told me the whole story about seeing these things flying around. And he thought it was a threat to national security. So he took pictures. He showed me the pictures. I asked him if I could take these pictures. And that's how the initial part of the investigation started. Paul Paul, then if you can, buddy, if you're gonna come in and
Yeah. Of
But,
course.
So Paul went back and look, we developed the pictures, and we found that what Paul was taking pictures of was a highly classified United States Air Force drone program. This is the first part of the first time Air Force tested drones, and this is back in the early '80s.
So this is arguably, I mean, it's not alien tech, but it is highly secret, like, you know, very top secret. It's the next gen weapon systems, you know, that we would see deployed after the stealth bombers. So you're saying Paul kind of tapped into it by accident, but on purpose, and your job was to make him. And again, your counterintelligence. You got to do what you got to do.
Well, what I did was Paul gave me his whole background, and he said I worked for MUFON, and before that ATPRO, and before that NICAP. So he was always a believer in UFOs. He told me what he was seeing, what he was taking pictures of, were unidentified flying objects, and probably from another planet. So I said, "Wow, that's amazing, Paul." Well, I couldn't tell him what this was because it was classified. So
Right.
what I did was I just went along with him. I just agreed to what he thought it was. I said, "Wow, you know what, Paul, you're probably right. Probably are UFOs." So that began the Paul Benowitz operation called Project 7 Lambs. And what our job was is to convince him that they were UFOs in order to keep him away from the real operation or project dealing with the secret drone program. And
Right.
and Paul went along with it. I didn't have to drug him or anything like that. All that information about drugging. And so what we actually did, we told Paul that we wanted to do a contract with him, and we did. We did a contract that was a legal contract that went through his attorney and the base attorney, authorizing us to investigate him, investigate his facilities, investigate his house. He authorized us access to his house, his business. And so, and we did. We took advantage of all those things that he'd offer us. And what we wanted to make sure was that he was not involved in any kind of espionage or any detrimental threat to national security.
To that,
even though we
that's
knew
your job at the end of the day.
exactly that was my job. So we formulated an operations plan. In the military or in intelligence, you can't do anything without an operations plan. And so the operations plan was formulated at our headquarters in Washington, D.C. I was instructed to follow the operations plan. I did have some input into the operations plan, but I was new to this. I was a young intelligence officer, and I didn't have experience before this in dealing with something like this. So
Right.
there were other agents involved in this operation and helping me and guiding me along. But my supervisors felt they had confidence in me doing my job. And so what I was told to do, I did. And so that's the beginning of the Paul Benowitz case, Project 7 Lambs. Now, there are a number of twists and turns that the Paul Benowitz case took over the five years it was in operation. It involved espionage. It involved the actual photographing of unidentified flying objects by Paul. It involved some activities up in northern New Mexico around Tulsi, and involved a number of other things, and some of which are still classified, dealing with the National Security Agency. But I did this. I followed the investigation all the way through. When we terminated the investigation, I was given an award for doing such an outstanding job on the investigation. And
Right.
I maintained a friendship with Paul right up to the day he died in 2003.
And I think if Paul doesn't die, I think that this is a whole different story, because I think that was the domino for some people that tipped over, that made it feel like over the edge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but he died 18 years after the case closed.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm not saying that. Like I said, it's the fact that it's people think that, what happened to him in that situation led him down a path that made kind of made him go a little bit insane. But in reality, again, there are so many complex facets to this story, so many, because you honestly you like you talked about, and you've never been shy about saying you honestly like the guy, you were his friend. It's just so happens that you also were tasked with not to put things in his head, but to allow him to continue believing what he already believed, right? And maybe feed some fuel to the fire here and there. And that is the job of a counterintelligence person. And again, you were doing your job. You had someone who you reported to. You thought you had your career. This is what you signed up for. So just because you stumbled onto a UFO thing, doesn't make you the bad guy.
Right. I did my job, and it wasn't just me. There were many other agents involved. The National Security Agency got involved in this, which caused some discontent with our operation and with Paul Benowitz. They're the ones that
it crossed the wires.
Well, yeah, it did, because they're the ones that surreptitiously entered his home and placed devices that we didn't place. We did have some devices in his home, but he knew about those. But when he found some other devices, he called me. I went there with a technical agent, somebody else, and looked at the other devices and found out that they weren't ours. But we knew they were government. And then we realized that National Security Agency was involved in this.
And did you attempt to communicate with them? I mean, it's probably like talking to a brick wall, but did you attempt to, like, hey guys, we're already here?
Yeah, we did. When we found out the NSA was involved, we uncovered two NSA officers who rented a house across the street from Paul, and we confronted them. Later, I went out to the NSA facility on Kirtland Air Force Base, Star Range it's called, and confronted the operations officer with National Security Agency out there, and asked him, why are you interfering with our investigation? He said, because we got command authority out of Washington to investigate Paul Benowitz too. And I said, you should have coordinated your investigation with our investigation. You knew we were doing it. And then I pulled out a briefcase that I had, and the bugs that they had placed in there, I threw down on his desk. I said, there's your bugs. We took them out. He said, we don't have authority to do that. And I said, yeah, I do. We do have authority. It's our operation. It's not your operation. If you want to put those bugs back in there, you're going to coordinate with us. And then I was briefed on what they were concerned about. And what they were concerned about, and this is not classified anymore, they were experimenting with laser systems on Kirtland. And one of their laser systems that they were experimenting with, which at that time was highly classified, was they were pointing the laser up in the sky at passing Soviet satellites, and the laser would blind the lens of the satellite, so they couldn't take pictures of the base. Kirtland had a lot of classified areas on the base. And Paul had tapped into the signals, the communication systems that was used to do that. And I didn't know about that until I was briefed at that point. He said, and so that NSA considered that to be espionage or even sabotage. So that's when the FBI became involved in it, because the FBI is responsible for any type of espionage activities within the United States. And so we brought in FBI, some people that I worked with all the time with the FBI. Even though we were federal agents, we always let the FBI handle civilians outside military control. Anyways, that's how they became involved in this. And but we found that Paul was a scientist, a physicist. He owned a scientific laboratory. He did a lot of experiments there. He made devices for submarines and for Air Force aircrafts. And so he was smart, very smart. And he had some good theoretical technicians working with him at his lab. And so they created a device that was able to detect frequencies in a broader range than normal. And so, and that's what he was using to tap into the signals that were directing the laser up towards the passing Soviet satellites. In itself, that would not be espionage or sabotage, but because Paul didn't know what he was doing, he didn't know what he was collecting.
Right.
But so now we got a problem. We got to convince Paul that the signals that he was receiving was also UFOs related, extraterrestrials, and not anything to do with the laser program. So now NSA turned that back over to me, because once we found out that he wasn't stealing anything, then I had a double sword. Then I had to convince him that those signals were in fact ET signals. And that presented a Pandora's box, so to speak.
And, I can't imagine for you that felt comfortable feeding him that information, because at that point, you're friends with the guy, you feel for him, and because of that government bureaucracy, now you're forced into this situation.
Well, not necessarily government bureaucracy. It was just a job that I had to do because of my position and the fact that I wasn't. This is where the operation turned away from my ability to contribute some things to the operations plan. They created a brand new operations plan. They sent it down to me without asking for any input from me. And they said, this is what you're going to do. There's 20 or whatever it was, 20 different things I had to do. And so I looked at them, and I went to my supervisor, who was a civilian, a GM-15. And I said to him, I said, John, I don't know that we should be able to do all these things, because I think I suggested other courses of action to take. And John said, well, that this came down from headquarters, so we got to follow what they said. And so we had a secure telephone conversation, a conference call with some of the people in Washington. And I put in my 2 cents, said, I suggest we do these things. And there were 5 or 6 different things. And they said, no, you're going to do it our way. I said, because he said, we're dealing with national security here, and we can't make a mistake. And if there's a mistake made, it's rather we make it up here than you make it down there. Okay.
Right. Okay.
I had no choice but to follow orders and do it the way they wanted to.
Yeah. And again, and so the Paul Benowitz story, that's kind of, would you say, did you ever have a fascination in real UFOs, or did it kind of spawn out of, because I can't imagine, feeding UFO disinformation. You'd have to start studying up on it. going to conventions, maybe hearing people speak. Did you do all those things and then get interested in the real topic of UFOs because you're like, holy shit, there's actually something here? Or was it you already had an interest before the Benowitz case?
No, this goes back to 1979. I was asked to investigate a case out of a place called Coyote Canyon, a classified testing range on Kirtland, whereby a private security guard from Sandia National Laboratories observed a UFO land at a classified storage area. I investigate that incident. I knew nothing about UFOs or United States government involvement with UFOs before that. And when I was pushed into this investigation, and therefore I had to be briefed into a program, a special program. So I went to a location on Kirtland, on west side of Kirtland, Air Force Special Security Office is called, and I was given a briefing into the program. And this briefing consisted of United States government involvement with the investigation of UFOs and alien contacts from 1947 to present day, which would have been 79. And they showed film. I wasn't the only one in the room. There were a number of other people getting the same briefing, and showed us the Roswell recovery film. It talked about other crash sites. It talked about different species of extraterrestrials. They showed the film. Yeah, we had
showed you the Roswell film?
The recovery film, yes. 37 minutes.
Their efforts in recovery of the Roswell wreckage.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they showed the military film from 1947. Showed up all of us. They showed us the live picture of a live ET that they found in the craft. They talked about the 1949 craft, same type of craft, same type of extraterrestrials that had crashed farther west, way out near Pelona Peak, past Socorro, New Mexico. And so this briefing lasted a couple hours. So now I know that the United States government and the AFO side still continue to investigate UFOs and UFO sightings. And the criteria was if a UFO was sighted near a base or on a base involving Air Force resources, Air Force aircrafts, or Air Force personnel, the AFOSI would investigate it. And it would be a classified investigation because if you can remember back in 1969, the condom report, the Air Force wiped their hands supposedly of UFO matters and turned everything over to DIA, which was a relatively new agency back then. And the Air Force wasn't supposed to be involved in this anymore, but we were, and we still, and that agency is still doing it.
I was going to say, side note, do you think that is why the Air Force is still the most hush-hush about this?
Yeah.
Because they really, really, really know what's going on?
Yeah. And I'll give you an example. I was called up to Washington, D.C. in January of 2022 to give a deposition on my knowledge of the UFO phenomena. The Department of Defense Inspector General's office called me up there. We were in a secure area, and they asked me a number of questions about what I did during my time in. Mm-hmm. And they had two reports that I had done way back in the 1980s. And they showed me these reports. And the first thing I noticed that they were heavily redacted. And I looked at the reports. I looked at the last page, and I said, yeah, I remember these reports, but what do you want to know about them? And they started asking me questions about them. I said, well, can you reach in there and get me an unredacted report? Because I don't remember everything I did 40 years ago. And they told me, we can't get one. AFOSI won't give us an unredacted report. And I said, wait a minute, you guys.
So they were hoping that you would remember.
Yes.
And be able to fill in the gaps.
Exactly. And I said, well, you mean to tell me that you're the DODIG and you can't get an unredacted report? And they said, no, we
Does that-
can't. We've tried everything. So
Does
that
that
gives you an
concern you?
example of the there's no cooperation between different agencies within the government regarding this topic. And so I said, well, I'll do the best I can looking through it and telling you about it. It was a recovery operation that happened that they gave me a report on. And then in September 2022, I went back to Washington and spoke to a different set of people within the IG's office. But they had finally an unredacted report that I did.
Okay.
And they said, hey, okay, this is an unredacted report. We want to know about it. And that was the Paul Benowitz case with all the different twists and turns that this case had. And it was I think it was like 1,000 pages in this report in that 7 lambs. So I said, well, what do you want to know about it? And they said, we would specifically want to know about the photographs that he took on such and such a date up near Springer, New Mexico. And I told him, I said, yeah, I had him. I saw him. And what happened was he's a pilot also. Paul was a pilot, private pilot. Yeah, Paul was a pilot. He had his own plane, a Cessna 180. He flew that around. He had problems though, because first of all, Paul wasn't in the best of health. Paul smoked 4 or 5 packs of cigarettes a day. He drank excessively, large amounts of caffeine every day, quart bottles of Coca-Cola, drank coffee, didn't take care of himself. Okay, so that's one thing. He was having problems clearing his FAA physical, but he would still fly anyways. Anyways, he was flying up there as he went up to Dulce. He had with him a person that worked in the laboratory with him, and he was a photographer. That person was a photographer. So Paul they got in a plane. We were flying back, and they were over northern New Mexico, a place called Springer, and a huge UFO came down and almost touched his left wing, and it stayed right there. In fact, Paul in his right seat photographer could actually look through a portal and see something moving in there. And of course the guy that he had with him took a lot of pictures of this. This UFO seemed to follow him, but it was very careful not to sway into Paul's air path. Paul, when he had to make a course correction, the UFO seemed to anticipate it and moved away from him. And
now,
so
is this before you met him or after or during?
No, this is during.
During
this operation. This is about a year into the operation.
Sorry,
about a year into the operation.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you think that there's even a slivers of a chance that it was U.S. deeper than you go, deep black, in the earth, black hole kind of program following him?
Well, if it was, it surprised a lot of people, because when Paul got back after he got back late one night, and he immediately called me. I was unmarried and I lived in an apartment, and it was I think it was a Saturday night, and actually I remember having a date that night. I wasn't married at the time, of course, and Paul called me, and he was so almost screaming on the phone. You got to come over here. Got to come over here. I got to show you something. Got to come over here, please. I said, okay, Paul, calm down. I said, what is it? He said, I almost was hit by a UFO. I got pictures of it. And so I thought, okay. So I called another agent who was actually a duty agent. We always had a duty agent, 24-hour duty agent. And I wasn't duty agent, but he was. Anyway, we went out. We went over to the lab, and he had his own photo studio there. He could develop his own film, and he had just come out when we got there. of a studio, and he had 8x10s and 5x7s, and he had them on his desk or a table next to his desk. He said, look there, see them? So I started looking at him. I thought, wow. And I said, well, and he tells me the whole story about, how it happened. And I said, well, Paul, I need to have these verified. So can I get them? I need also the negatives. And he said, yeah. So he gave me everything. And then Monday, I showed them to my boss and some other people that are working on this project with me. And they said, and one of the people that was working on this project was a 24-year veteran of the Special Projects Branch of OSI, which dealt specifically with the subject of UFOs. He spent 24 years doing this stuff. And I showed him this. He said, yep. And he immediately, just looking at it, saying, that's such and such a craft. It's flown by such and such a species of it. And I said, you already know this stuff? He said, yeah.
Oh, this thing was legit.
Huge craft. It was. It wasn't.
So this was not ours. This was an alien craft.
Yeah, it was definitely alien. And so we packaged everything up and sent it up with a report, sent up to Washington to OSI DIA. And for the longest time, I didn't hear back. Finally, I inquired, what about there was somebody within the DIA that I was dealing with, because after 1969, the Condon Report, all OSI generated reports went through OSI to DIA, and DIA actually was the one that was a clearinghouse. They're the ones that stored it all, and they had all the special analysts up there. Anyways, right. I asked the DIA guy, I said, on a secure line, I said, well, what do you think of it? And he said, well, you're not cleared yet. I said, what do you mean I'm not cleared? I said, I already seen the pictures. I'm investigating this. He said, well, we'll have to get you cleared. I said, you got to be kidding me. So anyways, right. I said, okay, So I go and talk to my boss. And my boss says, bullshit. Oh, well,
you can curse.
So, okay, bullshit, he said. I said, well, you want to get me cleared? Or, I've already seen these pictures.
Like, what the fuck is the point of that? Like, I saw the goddamn things.
So he said, well, there's a need to know everything, which there is in the government. Even though you have a highest level of security clearance, there's a need to know. And I said, okay. So a couple of days later, he said, okay, you need to go back over to AFSO and you're going to get cleared on something else. So I went over there and I got cleared on, they told me about 5 species of ETs that have been visited Earth and the type of crafts they fly. And they're all different biology. They all have different biologies, and they all have different technologies. They come from different planets and all this. And I thought to myself, wow, we already know all this stuff. We must have been dealing with these things for years. That was my impression. So I get briefed on that. Now I'm in that part of it. I'm in. So I go back and now I can I read things that are coming in on a secure system, encrypted message system that dealing with extraterrestrial contacts or extraterrestrial sightings of
right.
What we call identified alien craft, IACs. And so I said, wow, this is really, and then I realized how these things are being seen all over. And so anyways, I got that briefing and how
many of these, if I can interject really quickly.
Yeah.
So you said that you were told about species. Can you get into any specifics about maybe what are the most common species that we see visiting Earth? If you have to phrase it in your educated opinion, what do you think?
Well, we didn't discuss statistics in that area realm. We just in a briefing, and there were only 4 of us in this briefing. It was just the number. There were 5 different species. They had weird names that DIA named them for some particular reason. They never told us why they called them what they did. But there's a lot of people out there that know this. This has been on the internet for a long time. Anyways, the most benevolent, they did talk about whether some were dangerous to humans or not. The benevolent ones were the Ebens, the ones that crashed in Roswell, the one we had in captivity from 47 to 52. They were just considered the Greys, but they were the Ebens.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were considered the Ebens, the extra biological entities, and they named them. Apparently we had more than one in captivity, but at that time we only had one. They came from Zeta Reticuli. They were 3 to 4 foot tall. They had a number of they had ears and eyes. They had a mouth, but they didn't eat food like we ate. They didn't have any teeth. They were extremely smart. They had their skin was grayish colored, but they wore the same color of like a flight suit, a one-piece suit over.
Right.
So their skin isn't exposed.
So it's like a tight-fitting wetsuit.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Very, very thin. They didn't eat food the way they had their own food in the spacecraft.
Would they take so? Because I've heard accounts recently about them, like they do have a mouth and they put this like capsule in, and it kind of like it maintains their avatar, because that's really what it is. I don't know how much insight you would have to it. You don't have to say anything about it, but it's something I heard recently, and from a source that I deem credible.
That might be it, but I didn't know anything about that. The only thing I knew is that they had these elongated pills, to us it looked like pills, and they would insert it into their mouth, and it would, I guess, dissolve or something, and that's their food. That's the only food. But
So
what they did.
but there's confirmation kind of about. So there was a pill of some sort that was ingested by these beings.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But ironically, they did require water. Apparently, one of the most common things that these creatures had in common was with water. Yeah, water. They did consume water, but I didn't know much any more about it than that. The Avatar thing, I've heard. I've asked some people about that, and they haven't answered back with me.
I mean, honestly, it's semantics. When you really think about it, it is semantics, because whether or not, I mean, these things are standing. I mean, the story I want to get to is, because I find it to be the most jaw-dropping that you tell, is the closed caption alien interview that you watched. So I don't know if we're skipping ahead way far ahead. But how far is it between you getting access to this server or whatever, this backdoor into the government's knowledge into these species, you're being read into these projects? How far is that from you seeing this closed caption interview that was somewhere on the base? It wasn't you were watching it on a TV.
That incident happened at Area 51. It was
okay. So this was
several years later. Yeah.
Okay. So later. Maybe we can wait to get to that. So continue with Kirtland.
Okay. So once I got that special access program down and cleared for the other incident, during this time frame, during the investigation, Leo Sprinkle and Alan Hynek became involved with Paul Benowitz. They brought Paul a monitor, for his computer, and it was a black and white monitor, and they brought it to him, unbeknownst to us. Paul didn't think much of it because he knew both people, and he thought, well, it's a gift. I think it was right around holiday. I think it was before Christmas, and that he wanted to. They wanted to give him this gift, so Paul took it and he started using it. This is when all these strange visual things came on. The monitor, the writings that came up that he had printed and things like that. And he had it for about a week, a little over a week. And then finally, Paul called me one day and said, Richard, you need to go and look at what I got on my monitor. And now we had already, all our technical experts had already checked out his computer, his old monitor. So we had an expert computer person. Her name was Teresa. She was an agent, OSI agent, but she was expert in all different things to do with computers. Of course, the computers back in those days were, relatively new to us. Although I can tell you that in 1980, I had a laptop computer, and I could send messages on the Defense Communications Network, DCN. And we got them. Of course, the military gets all the new technologies way before civilians.
Yeah,
that's just a side note. Anyways, we go out to Paul's office with Teresa. Teresa and I won't go over there. And the first thing I noticed when Paul says, "Look at this," I said, "Paul, where'd you get this monitor?" He said, "Oh, Alan Hynek brought it to me." I said, "You what? Why didn't you tell me this?" He said, "Well, I thought it was just a gift." And so I said, and then he showed me all these things that were coming up on the monitor. I thought, well, bull. I said, "I tell you what, we're disconnecting this monitor. Teresa's going to take it back to her shop. She's going to go over it with a fine-tooth comb, and then we're going to figure out what, if this has been bugged." So I said, "Well, where is Hynek?" And he said, "Well, he's with Leo Sprinkle. They're doing a investigation here on an abductee." I said, "Okay." I said, "Where's he staying at?" And they told me someplace, a hotel. And so I said, "Okay." So I left there. I contacted Jerry Brown, an FBI agent that I worked with, and I said, "Jerry," I said, "we need to go over and talk to these people." And so he meets me over at this. Actually, it was like a extended living apartment type situation, and we went over there. And just as we got there, we saw Leo and Hynek, and I knew them both. I had met them before.
Well, yeah. They're at this time they're publicly involved with Project Blue Book, right?
So this is 1980, 81. Blue Book had been closed, but I knew
Blue Book was closed. Yeah.
That was in 69, 10 years before. But I knew they were, and I saw them. I said, "Oh, there they are right now." So we kind of followed them to where they were staying in this apartment. And I said, I had actually met Leo Sprinkle before and talked to him. Alan Hynek, I saw him in a room once, but I didn't actually formally introduce myself. So I did. We pulled out our credentials, Jerry and I, and showed him. I said, "We need to talk to you about something." So they became defensive. But anyways, they went inside. We went in the apartment. I said, "Did you give Paul Benowitz a monitor, a computer monitor?" And Hynek said, "Yeah, I did. I bought it." I said, "Where'd you buy it at?" He told me where, some store, someplace in, I think, Phoenix. Anyways, I said, "Okay." I said, "What did Paul tell you?" He said, "Well, he said that you guys are investigating him and the aliens that he's in contact with and all this stuff." I said, "Paul told you all that?" And that's all classified, right?
Right.
He said, yeah, Paul told me all that. I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, guess what, guys? Now you're going to be under investigations because what he told you is sensitive." And so then Jerry, the FBI agent, Jerry Brown, immediately wrote him the riot act.
Right.
And
They probably
Heineck,
weren't so happy about this.
Heineck, I think, was going to cry. He said, "Oh, you got to ruin my reputation." I said, "No, we're not ruining anything. You already did it.
You
So,
ruined it by showing up here and getting involved."
Yep. So anyway, we kind of gave a debriefing, and they said, "Oh, they promised they won't talk about it." And I said, "Well, I can't keep you from seeing Paul Benowitz, but I can, if you provide him any further any items, or if he tells you anything, you're going to might end up testifying in a federal court." "Oh, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that." So
Yeah,
anyways, then we went back.
Heineck's also for like, he did work with Project Blue Book. He knows that you're serious, and when you get, I mean, he knows that. I would consider the guy a patriotic guy. And if you guys told him, "Listen, you can't say anything, like, you guys are now part of this investigation," they would probably take that pretty seriously.
Yeah, he did. And when we went from there over to talk to Paul, read Paul the Riot Act, and Paul said, No. I didn't tell him all that stuff. I said, "Well, how would they know it? They're assuming this." I said, "Paul, listen, one more mistake on your part.
All that.
One more mistake on your part." And this is probably the only time I ever really became angry at Paul. I said, "And you're in trouble. I can guarantee you're going to be in trouble." I said, "You're going to lose," pointing over to his laboratory. I said, "You're going to lose every single government contract you have."
Mm-hmm.
And Paul says, "I will never do it again. My lips are sealed." And as far as I know, he never. Now,
I mean, it's one thing to tell, like, your wife or a friend and, like, a confidant, but no, you just told the former Project Blue Book scientist, who is now investigating cases on his own with Leo Sprinkle. It's like, Paul, you made a very big mistake.
Yeah, he did, and he realized it. And But now this brings up another part of the investigation. Myrna Hansen. I don't know if you know about the Myrna Hansen case.
No.
Anyways, Leo Sprinkle and Alan Heineck were in Albuquerque or New Mexico conducting an investigation on the Myrna Hansen. And Myrna Hansen was a very uneducated, unmarried woman with a son living up in northern New Mexico. She was driving down a road. She missing time. Her and her son, 7-year-old son, were abducted, taken into a large facility, and all sorts of experiments were done on both her and her son. She described the facility. She did have the ability to draw. She was really good at drawing. And what she drew later, we found out, would be similar to a classified storage bunker out at Kirtland Air Force Base. So we thought, "Oh my God, somebody took her out there," because it's just number one, she had no affiliation with the military. None of her family had been in the military. Well, she never even knew her dad. Her mother wasn't. They didn't have any friends that were in the military. She was the only child, so she never had access.
You also brought up, she wasn't super educated, so it's not like, she was studying geography and maps and, doing all that kind of stuff in her spare time.
Right. She dropped out of school when she was like 14 or 15. And anyways, so they were Leo and they saw this drawing, and then anyway, we get involved in this because it's on Kirtland, and we know where this facility is. So I mean, we immediately went out there to look at it. And now this facility is a bunker, above ground bunker that had an underground facility, and it was used. It was an experimental bunker that they were going to build later on to store nuclear weapons in it. What they would do is they put the nuclear weapon in on a platform and then drop it down 60 feet, close it up. So if a terrorist or enemy got into that bunker, the nuclear weapon was 60 feet down and they couldn't get to it. And that's basically the bunker. So we went out there and looked at this bunker that we think that she had been into because she drew it. And we got inside of it and we went down, and everything she described was exactly the same as this bunker. Except she was talking about this hatch off to the one side, to the left, excuse me, facing the back of the bunker. And she said, when you open that, they took me inside and they had vats of human bodies. Well, this hatch, when you open it up, it was an escape hatch. If somebody was trapped down there, could get out, crawl out. So we got concerned that she had been down there. So we started an investigation trying to figure out who took her down there, but we couldn't ever find this out. Exactly. And so we then we took over. We paid her money. She was treated by military physicians. We even bought her a little car. Because we thought somehow she's connected to this thing somehow, or maybe she was really an abductee. Now, at that point, I didn't know anything about abductions. I was never briefed into it. And this is a funny story. When I do the report and send it up to DIA, about a week later, these two DIA agents come down from Washington. And of course, we're a secure facility, OSI, and they come out and they're at the security checkpoint. The security guy calls me. He says, "Hey, there's two guys here from DIA. And they do have yellow cards." Well, yellow cards, we have different types of credentials that will get you into any place. If I went from Kirtland to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, if I had the right type of card, I could get into any facility.
Right.
I said, okay. I said, okay, send them in. So they come in, they sit down. They said, "Hey, yeah, we're here to talk about this report that you sent up on this Myrna Hansen." I said, who are you guys with? He says, we're in section D17. I said, "What's D17? He says, "The abduction investigation section." And I said, "What? We have a section. We have a section that investigates abductions." He said, "Yeah."
What?
And I said, "Holy cow." He said, "Oh, you're not briefed in yet." And I said,
"Yeah,
I've never been briefed in." So what do I do? I go,
you never got briefed in?
I know. Oh, I did eventually. After they left, I went over to the Air Force Special Security Office, went through the same briefing about abductions, the fact that we know all this stuff about abductions, which really shocked me because I never even knew anything about it. So anyways, that's a side note and a side part of the Paul Benowitz case. And another very fascinating incident that happened. I don't know. Are we on for an hour? Or how long are we on for? Because we're. Do you have an hour show or longer, Tyler? I'll just keep talking. Anyways, one night, myself, another agent, Steve, and then Jerry Miller went out to Paul Benowitz's house for dinner. It was a rainy night.
I don't know what just happened. Microphone check. Microphone check. Can you hear the microphone?
Yes, I hear you. I hear you now.
All right, so it's just you I can't hear now. All right. Can you try speaking?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I don't know
Testing,
why I
1, 2,
can't
3.
hear you.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 5, 4,
What
3,
the
2,
hell
1.
just
Testing.
happened? One second. I apologize.
Okay.
I think I just heard you.
Okay, testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2,
Nope.
3.
Yep. Yep. I heard that.
Test 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. Testing. Hear me now?
Yep. Okay, there it is. Yep.
Testing.
There
Okay.
it is. There it is. Sorry about that, my friend.
Okay, where did we? Are we going beyond an hour, right? Because
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I began by talking about an incident that happened at Paul Benowitz's house. Myself, another agent, Steve, and Jerry Miller went out to Paul's house for dinner one night. We had a nice dinner. His wife cooked it. After dinner, we went into a side room, a room like a den. Had a lounge, a couch, and myself. I was sitting at one end, and Steve, the other agent, was sitting at the other end. And to my left were 2 lounge chairs. Jerry Miller was sitting in one, and Paul Benowitz was sitting on the other. This room, the house had cathedral ceilings, but there was a chandelier above me. The wall that was in front of me was all just a white wall. Farther to the right was sliding glass doors that went out to a outside patio, and then farther to the right was an area, a windowed area, another room. So we were sitting there. Wife was going to bring us coffee and brandy. I didn't drink brandy, but
Yeah.
I was looking at the wall, and all of a sudden I see this ball, a light ball, down at the lower left-hand corner, just light up, and it started moving, twinkling, moving up the wall in a diagonal formation. I looked over at Jerry, and he tapped his watch. And I looked at Steve. I want to make sure everybody was seeing what I was seeing. I said, "You see this?" And I didn't say it, but he said, "Yeah." So this thing moved up the wall, all the way up. And again, this is cathedral ceilings. The ball went all the way up. Now, it didn't stay against the wall. It came out. So I knew it wasn't a reflection or somebody shining something against the wall. It went all the way up above the chandelier and spun around. Then they came back down almost the same path that it went up, but it stopped right in the middle of the room. And I'm looking at everybody, and we're looking at this thing, and Paul's kind of just nonchalantly looking at it. And it was twinkling and turning, and all of a sudden it went back towards the wall, went back down, diagonally to the bottom left-hand corner, and disappeared. So I looked at Jerry, and Jerry looked at his watch. And the reason Jerry looked at his watch is we didn't want to be involved in any missing time. We didn't know what this was. So, and Jerry was a seasoned investigator. So I kind of said, I understood what he said. And I said to Paul, "What was that?" He said, "So now you see what we see all the time." And his wife comes out of the kitchen, and she had a tray of coffee. And she said, "Oh, our visitors came to say hi to us." And she set to
Puts
tray
the coffee down like, hey, just like, "Hey, it's Tuesday."
I said,
That was unbelievable.
"This has happened before?" And Paul said, "All the time. I said, "Well, where are they coming from?" He said, "You tell me." So
Right,
then immediately
you're the expert.
we started the investigation. Jerry was the technical expert, and we started getting equipment out of our vehicles, and we started scanning, and we started doing all these things. And we pulled Paul aside. We took him in, actually a front room of his house, had a little foyer, and we went in there. And he was standing against the wall, and I said, "Paul, listen to me. If you did this, you're going to get in a hell of a lot of trouble. And I want you to tell me the absolute truth." He said, "Rick, I don't know what it is. They come and go. They're the aliens that I'm telling you about." He said, "I can't do that. I can't duplicate that." So over a period of a couple of weeks, we tried to duplicate it. We were trying to do all sorts of things. Well, I wasn't, but the technical people were. and we couldn't duplicate it.
And let's remind people of the year that this happened, because the technology that we have nowadays, you could fake fake something like that, where like you with a projector, and if you really wanted to try to fool someone, this day and age there's technology to do so. But back then, this is a whole different world. We're talking about mainly basic technology. So
well, we knew it wasn't something that he did. We eliminated that. We eliminated any type of outside interference. Experts watched what we did. We filmed the whole house. We didn't film this, obviously. We didn't have any cameras, but they listened to how we described it, and Jerry described it, and Steve described it, and they came to the conclusion it was in fact be extraterrestrial, because they couldn't duplicate it and they couldn't figure out exactly what it was. So what do you say? It was a loss for words. Nobody seemed to know, although we had visitors from NSA, DIA, CIA, the Institute for the Research, the U.S. Air Force Research Institute, the Special Operations Center, U.S. Air Force, Los Alamos, came down, and they scoured the house. They actually took that wall apart. They took that wall with consent from Paul. We were going to replace it. They took the wall, totally took it down, examined inside of it, and there was nothing there. So we don't know where it came from. Paul did film one occasion after this, and this was like about 1983. Paul did film a ball, this light ball. We didn't call them orbs. He filmed it in his house. He came home from his wife and him came home from a movie or something, and what happens is, and I didn't actually feel this, but Jerry did. When just before the ball appeared, there seemed to be a lot of static in the room. I mean, I didn't feel it, but Jerry did, and actually Steve did too.
Okay.
And so when Paul and his wife came home from whatever a movie or something they were at, he felt that, and so he immediately went and got his video camera, 8mm. He had an 8mm camera, and he was walking around the house. He didn't see anything then, but when he walked up the steps towards the bedroom, he saw the orb, the ball of light coming right at him, and he immediately started filming it. So he had about 10 to 12 seconds of it on film.
Oh my God.
And so he, of course, gave that to us, and we analyzed it, and nobody seemed to know what it was. So that's that part of it.
These pictures Paul Benowitz took, the negatives you guys took, all the evidence, the stuff that he gave you that we consider legit, that you consider legit. Where is all that?
Locked away.
Yeah,
it's
locked
DIA. It's up in DIA filing cabinets somewhere. I guess. I never saw it again.
Do you regret not making a copy of at least one of these things and keeping it, or would you violate every?
Well, I would have gotten in trouble because it was classified. So I followed the rules, and I think back now, I wish I would have kept one of them or two of them,
right?
But that just wasn't feasible back then. I mean,
and
you got to turn all that stuff in.
Yeah,
it's just like a police officer going to a crime scene, and you got all this evidence, and you want to keep one for your own. You can't do that. I mean, this
Right.
could have been a crime scene in a way, some type of a federal investigation or something. So, no, I couldn't keep it.
I got
didn't,
you.
so.
Yeah, no. Morally justified, absolutely. It just sucks because now it's like, and the next story we're going to talk about, like, they not only do they have evidence like that Paul Benowitz clip, but they have evidence that could literally just disclose to everybody in the matter of minutes that this is a legitimate, that aliens exist, right? That UFOs are real. They have all that evidence, and they could change the course of human history by releasing some of the evidence and allowing the general public the knowledge that I think that we are owed. So you end up going to the infamous Area 51. Now, people who work there know it as Groom Lake. So Groom Lake, your experience at Groom Lake, did you know the rumors about Area 51 before going in? What's your mindset going into that base? You're muted.
I'm sorry. The way it started was this. There was two agents stationed out there permanently. One of them got sick, really sick, and left. They sent him to a hospital in Texas. Another agent went on a extended vacation or extended leave for other reasons. Anyways, so there's had to be two people replacing them, and I was a 9Q, or I had been briefed into the program, and I talked about all those different programs. They're called 9Qs. And my boss came to me and said, "You going TDY or temporary duty? TDY is temporary duty out to Nevada." I said, "Okay, all right." So I just said, "Okay, well, where am I going?" And he said, "You're going to a classified location, a site alpha that unclassified was called for OSI. It was called site alpha."
Okay.
I said, "Okay," and I had no idea where this was. I didn't know anything about Area 51. Okay. I knew Nellis Air Force Base was out there.
Right.
I knew
the Nevada site.
Yeah. And Creech Air Force Base was out there, but I knew the Nevada test site was out there, but I didn't know about Area 51. Anyways, he said, "Well, you're gonna fly up to Vegas. Somebody's gonna pick you up, and they're gonna take you over to Nellis, and you're gonna get briefed in, and they're gonna give you a vehicle. It's gonna be a Jeep, CDHF Jeep, and then you're gonna drive out there." And I said, "Well, drive out where?" He said, "Drive out to the base." I said, "What base?" And I could, and he said, "Just go out there. They'll tell you." So I fly out there. I go to Nellis, and I go into a room and a skiff, and they brief me. They tell you, "Okay, you're going out to," they call it Detachment 3 Air Force Flight Test Center, Groom Lake. I said, "Okay." He said, "You're gonna go to Building 432, OSI office, and you're gonna be briefed in by Special Agent so and so." So I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And this is a map to get out there. And so I said, "Okay, yeah." So I spent the night there in a BOQ at Nellis, and I leave in the morning, and I drive out towards Alamo and up the road, and now there are these they call them undistinguishable landmarks that people if you were driving up there, you would never notice them, but that the military or the intelligence community use to know where to turn.
Okay, so these are like secret landmarks.
Yeah, you got to have a special gadget.
Oh, shit.
I can't go into any more details than that.
That's James Bond shit right there.
so I go and I get on the dirt road and driving forever. And I thought, Jesus, where is this base? And all of a sudden I come up and there's a gate there. And so the guards come out, and at that time, it was Air Force security personnel, Air Force security, the guards gates. And
Why
they come
is
up
it
to me.
something? Is it something different now?
Yeah, civilians, the camo dudes.
Military police?
No, not military police. The camo dudes. If you look at videos about it, the civilian security guards the outer perimeter, the military police the inner perimeter. Back in those days, the military had it all.
Okay.
He comes over to me. He says, "Yes, may I help you?" I said, "Yeah." And I showed him a card, and he looked, and he had to go back in the gate. He comes out. He had sign. I had the right card to get in, and then I had to sign in, and he said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I never been out here. Where do I go?" He said, "Just follow the road." He said, "Follow the road. You'll come to another gate. They'll let you in, and they'll tag your vehicle." I said, "Okay." And so I did. And so I finally get to the cantonment area, the base area, and I go around the room at the building 432, which was the OSI office. And I couldn't get in there. They had a phone on the outside. I called in, and they said, "Okay, yeah." Well, they knew they were expecting me because they had my orders. I went in and I checked in. And then I was briefed by one of the agent in charge out there, special agent in charge, and he tells me that I'm taking over for so-and-so who's sick, and he left, and he said, "You're probably going to be here for 90 to 180 days." I said, "Oh, okay." I wasn't married or anything, so I said,
So it's just yeah.
So I said, his first question was, "Oh, what exactly is this base?" He said, "Well, we're going to brief you in and let you know that, but there's other things you got to do first." I said, "Okay." So the first thing they did was I had to take these fingerprint. I had to do these specialized prints. They don't just print your fingers; they print up. It's up like this. Your hand, actually, your fingers. You put your 4 fingers in, and a light reads it, and it goes up over your hand like this. They do both of mine, and then they say, "Okay, we need to get in a little drop of your blood," and I do that, and I'm over at another place doing all this stuff. And I said, "Okay," and then he said, "Well, my boss says tomorrow morning you got to be over there at 8:00, and they're going to brief you into the program." He said, "Yeah, you got 5 special access programs you have to be briefed into." So okay, no problem.
Okay.
So they put me up in a BOQ on base. Nice little studio apartment. The cafeteria or the chow was down there, and the base exchange was over here. And they told me this, but they said, "You cannot leave the cantonment area."
So you were confined. You were literally. So you were confined.
Yeah, to where the base actually was. I couldn't go anywhere else other than that. And I said, "Okay." He said, "Don't try it." I said, "Oh, I'm not.
So this place is locked down to a degree, a degree that not even you saw before.
No. So I spent the night. I set up in the room they gave me in the studio apartment, and I went down to eat dinner, and it was similar to a military dining facility or a chow, but it was a lot nicer. I think it was a lot really nicer. The food was really, really nice. Anyways, the next morning I go back up. I watch TV. They had TV there, and then we get up in the morning, and I immediately go over to this building. I think it was 266 to get this briefing. So I go over there, and they let me in. I go in, and they put me in this room, and I go through the whole briefing, and they tell me exactly what they do out there, what they test, limited access, because I don't have the technical need to know. But they told me about the different areas. You got Area 51 here. You got S2 down here. You got this up here, you got this over here. You have access to all those areas, but not all the facilities at those areas. It's okay. And so then at the end of that briefing. It was really nothing really classified. It was just about the base, and he showed me maps and so forth. But I noticed the maps were all classified secret. And so I said, okay, and I got all that. And so he said, okay, now you need to go down the hall and room, whatever the room was. Go down the hall, room, whatever, and go in there, and they're going to give you another briefing. I said, okay. So I do that. I sit there, and I'm the only one in the room. There's nobody else in the room. The other briefing I had, there was like 3 or 4 people there.
Right. So this one's
there
like,
were. I was the only civilian. I was only in civilian clothes. I only worked in civilian clothes, obviously. The other 3 people in there, I think there was 4 of us. They were in military uniforms, so they were assigned there as military. So I go down the hall. I go in there, sit down, and I'm the only one there. And this woman comes in. She introduces herself. She's in civilian clothes, and she says, while you're out here, although you're an OSI agent, you're attached to the Air Force Operational Test and Evaluation Center out of Kirtland Air Force Base. That's what your badge will say, and we're going to make your badge for you. And they do that, and I said, okay, yeah, no problem. And he said, okay. She said, okay, the next part of the briefing is classified with all these different caveats and its special access programs. And I said, okay. So she briefs me, and it takes her about 25 minutes, and I can't go into that because it's still classified. I'm not going to go into what I was briefed on.
Yeah,
but it was
again,
it pertained to what they were doing out there as far as reverse engineering, and some of the areas had really sensitive things. And I said, okay, all right. I was utterly shocked by some of the things she's in the briefing. So I get the badge, and she's okay, you're clear. And she said, here's your monitor. And they give you something, and you have to wear it all the time while you're out there. And all I can say is it's think of it as something that they can keep track of where you're at all times. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So like for anyone who wants to maybe understand it, picture it like an older GPS device where it can allow them to know your location. And again,
yeah, it kind of looks like a pager. If you remember what a pager,
yeah.
I don't know if you remember what pagers. Yeah, okay, something like that.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, the military always gets the technology first, especially the place where they're doing R&D on it. So, So quickly before I jump into the next thing, 'cause I do want to talk about that closed caption alien interview. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar is a polarizing figure, but can you lend credence to any of his story? What's your...
Well, this is what I'll say about Bob Lazar. He certainly wasn't there when I was there. He would have been there years later. The problem with Bob Lazar's story is he talks about S4.
Okay.
There's no facilities on.
It's S2, right?
Yeah, within a Nellis Test and Training Range is called S4. It's S2. S2 is at the Papoose Lake area. I've been to S2. There's levels under S2, but everyone calls them levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They don't call them S4. Nobody that works there, even today, right now, we have people. We did a documentary some years ago, because of COVID, it's going to be aired here this summer, and you'll hear all about S2 and then whatever.
Maybe,
anyways, they're levels.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about getting a screener of that. I would love to be able to review that and help you out and get the word out. But yeah, continue.
Anyways, so S2 is the administrative control area for the underground facilities. I've never been underground. I've been to S2. I went out there to do an investigation, but I never have had access to go underground. So as I understand, there's 5 levels, but the people there call them levels. I work at level 2, level 3. The badges even say levels. It doesn't say S4. There's nothing that says S4 out there. So that's one problem with Lazar's story. That there's now there's a lot of things that he says that is factual. So I don't know anything more than that. And I'm not going to say he wasn't there. He probably was, but I don't know that he worked in any classified areas, because some of the things I confronted him with, he didn't have an answer to it. There's a code system. Anybody who works out at Area 51 knows what certain letters mean, and I can't talk about them, but there's 4 letters, and like A, B, C, and D. And if I said to you, if you were out there, I said, what is A, B, C, and D? You'd immediately tell me what they stood for. Well, Bob didn't know what they were, and anybody that had classified access would know what they meant.
And the hand scanners that you described, and you were there earlier than him, sound much more advanced than the ones that he describes. So, maybe there's some validity to like him being there, but not having the access that you did, or even other people who had the ability to go underground. He just like everyone, heard the rumors on the base, and after he met John Lear, who knows, the story, the Lazar story, it will always be polarizing in its nature. But so you're in Area 51 now. You're doing your duty, and how do you come across this closed caption, this interview, this you talk about it in the Dr. Greer testimony, and honestly, it blows my mind. So I would love you to walk me through each detail of that.
Okay. I was conducting an investigation and on a person, and I had access to a number of different facilities. And one of the facilities, another OSI agent that I worked with, was at that facility. And he had, early in the morning when we were planning what we were going to do, he said, I'm going to be over at such and such a building at such and such a time. I said, okay, I'm going to have to come over there and interview somebody. And so we did all this. And when I went to that facility, I got cleared in with my badge. And I said, I need to speak to so-and-so. And the security checkpoint officer, the person that was controlling the gate, so to speak, he said, well, he's in such and such area. He said, but I don't think your card will get you in there. I said, okay, well, let me try it. So I went down the hall, and the door opened as I was ready to try to get my badge in there. And let me say this, there's a certain way you have to use a badge to get in, and there's something else you have to do. Anybody that's been there would know it, and Bob didn't know it. Anyways, so I go in, the door's open, and there's some guy coming out, and I go in, there's an OSI just sitting over here, and there's a camera, and there's a recording going on, and I sit down next to him, and I'm talking, and I'm looking over at this, and I thought, wow, what is that? He said, that's an interview going on. I said, is that an ET? He said, yeah, that's an ET. And so it's a closed circuit camera. The ET isn't where we're at. It's in another building.
Yeah, but closed
I'm looking at a closed circuit camera. Because I asked him, I said, is this live? He said, yeah, it's closed circuit. I said, so I watched it for some time. I'm not really sure what I'm seeing because I'm not involved in that case. About that time, this Air Force Lieutenant Colonel comes in, and he stands right behind. The room isn't very big that we were in, but this other guy that I'm supposed to interview works in this building in another section. This lieutenant colonel comes in and he stands behind me, and he for just maybe 20 seconds he said, "Excuse me, sir," to me. He said, "Do you have a certain strip on my badge?"
Clearance.
He said, "Where's your badge at?" And I said, "Right here." He said, "You're not cleared for here."
Oh
And
God.
the OSI agent that was next to me said, "Oh, no, he is. He's cleared. I'm vouching for him." He said, he's got to have certain thing on his badge. He doesn't, so you have to leave. So I didn't want to argue with anybody, so I got him left. And I said, "Well, I'm supposed to see so-and-so." He said, "You go out that door, you go down the hallway, and you go into the next door down. Your badge will get you in there, but you're not cleared for here." So I didn't want to make a fuss, and I didn't want to get in trouble. So I leave. I go down and I do my business with this guy that I'm interviewing on an entire different case. So that's what happened. That's why I was able to see in a closed circuit camera an alien interview or interrogation or whatever you want to call it.
Now, from everything that you know, was there audio?
There was audio, but you have earphones on.
Oh, so it was one of those situations. Okay. Listen, I gotta ask. Do you think that there could possibly be? I think you've talked about this before. This is why I bring it up. A connection between us and specifically the Ebens or another group where they're the missing link. They're maybe they're the ones responsible for our creation, the doubling of our brain size in a cosmic scale, basically overnight. Of course, it was hundreds of thousands of years, but on a cosmic scale, it was basically overnight. So do you think that the government found out, or the military and industrial complex found out that potentially there is some sort of connection between them and us, and this is part of the secrecy? Because to be confronted with your own creator is something that I don't know if a lot of people could handle.
I don't know anything about that. I've never been read into any type of program. I've never seen anything in a classified or unclassified documents pertaining to that.
Even if you can't, I don't know if you're allowed to speculate on something like this, but would that be a good reason for secrecy? Maybe, do you think
Okay.
like kind of, what if they're too close?
Well, okay. Let me just tell you this. The EBA 1, who was found in the craft at Roswell, or Corona, New Mexico, stayed in captivity for 5 years and he died. He lived with a handling agent and that person was an Air Force captain. He was a linguist, but never did.
Okay.
I don't think he ever learned to speak the EBAN. But Linda Moulton Howell interviewed that captain years ago, back in the 80s.
Very funny
before he
that
passed
you bring
away.
her up, because
So she's the one could probably answer all your questions, and I can't, because I've never interviewed this guy. I mean, I've had many conversations with Linda Howell over the year, and she would be the one that could probably answer your question in a better way and a format than I can, because I don't know. I know that EBA 1 told us a lot of things about themselves, their civilization, the universe as they know it, how they explore the universe, and so forth and so on. But there's intricate parts of that Linda Howell talks about.
I've had her on the show.
I don't know about.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've had her on the show, and she's actually one of my topics to bring up to you, because you and her had a meeting where you had a meeting that kind of like sparked some controversy, but I think you guys have since reconciled and now are very friendly. But we'll get to that in a minute. But so I guess with everything that you've been exposed to, with everything that you've seen, the degree of so a lot of us in the community, we clamor for this confirmation. When you see people like David Grush come out and talk about reverse engineering craft and like stumbling across these programs, what are you thinking in your head? Are you ready? And do you think that the world is ready for this information to start coming out?
Well, number one, yeah, he's vindicating a lot of us out here that's already talked about it
Right.
for many years. And he's telling, in fact, I think this, well, I know one in particular, what he mentioned is actually dealing with one of my reports. So, yeah, there's number one, vindication. Number two, I think eventually disclosure is going to happen, but not in the way the public wants. They're not going to get everything they want. There's too many dark sides or dark forces, I would say, in the subject of UFOs and ETs or UAPs. There's a lot of many dark and dangerous paths that we found that the ETs took. I know many of them, but I can't talk about them. President Reagan was briefed into some of the dangerous things that particular race ETs were doing. He immediately
started the Star Wars initiative.
Yeah, he started the Star Wars initiative. Wanted these beings that were harming Americans or harming Earthlings to be shot on sight and all sorts of different things.
The thing is what we learned from the Russians that these UFOs have a very, very, and I guess I do want to. I'm glad you brought this up. So from Russian documents, we know that they originally were told to shoot at UFOs, and then after losing several pilots, like 12 to 14, they deduced that these UFOs had an incredible capacity for retaliation, and therefore they said to stop shooting at UFOs because of the risk that it posed to the pilots and the people that are doing it. So, I can see why Reagan was all gung ho, and I know you came up. You've talked to Dr. Greer, but Dr. Greer kind of says that all alien species are transcendent and they're all benevolent, they're all nice, they're all good. In your experience, is that the case or not?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
There are 5 species that I was briefed in on, and one particular species are extremely dangerous to humans. They've harmed humans, killed humans, abducted humans, probably not only abducted them but kidnapped them in a missing persons type of way. They have harmed infrastructure, earthly infrastructures. They've damaged nuclear weapons, so they're not friendly.
So, and you can't even call that indifference, because I do think there's there is a line between being malevolent and being indifferent, because indifferent is like it's whatever, you coexist, and you're not particularly you don't have any skin in the game on whether this species lives or dies, or you don't have any vested interest in it. That's indifference. And that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about they are just straight up malevolent.
Yeah, absolutely. They purposely abduct humans. They purposely do horrible experiments on them, harming them. There are a number of whistleblowers or witnesses that the Department of Defense has who could talk about these horrible experiences that they've gone through. Women that have had their
fetuses taken.
Fetuses taken. They are abducted and they leave with missing fingernails, toenails.
Yep.
They suffer vaginal bleeding for an enormous amount of times, for weeks and on end. Their vitreous fluids out of their eyes are taken. One was blind for 10 days at a time. Every time this happens, I mean, horrible things that you can't consider them benevolent.
Right. What do you think? What do you think that the connection is to any of these species and our ancient cultures? I know in one discussion you talked about the Eben having maybe like a Tibet, if I'm not mistaken, a Tibetan. A viewer question came in about this about like an it had an idol of a Tibetan deity. Is there have these things been coming here for longer than we've been here, do you think?
Yeah, I think they've been here for a long time, visiting us for over 2,000 years. I think that that was the figure that
yeah, so the actual question is from at Holding under Salinger, and he says Rick has said that one Eben had an idol of a Nepal Tibet deity. What deity was it?
I don't know deities. He just had he had he had some sort of a booklet, and they had
there was a book
in Eben. The Eben had something inside the craft. It was like a manual or something, and it's all in Eben. Nobody could understand it, but they had on the in there some picture of something. And I think eventually when we tried to we communicated with him, and I'm only getting this secondhand, so
that's fine. I understand.
Is that when we ask the Eben, when he was able to understand English and understand our words, do you believe in God? He didn't understand what a God was. But when we explained what our definition of a God was, then he more or less aligned it to a deity, different deity, like a universal deity in the universe that they worship.
Like
and
a one.
And so on this particular pamphlet or whatever manual was this deity, and now deity. If you go to a Tibetan monastery, they found the same exact picture. I didn't. Other people did this, and so that they connect them with having visited Earth thousands of years ago, and having the same beliefs in so much. But again, I'm not the expert in that area, so I'm just explaining it in the layman's terms that I was explained it. So
I know, totally. I totally get it. Because there is, a big faction of people that think that there is a ties. There are ties between, like, the pyramids, right? These places, these places on Earth that are seen as holy, or land that is sacred, right? They tend to reflect places in the stars. And if you're talking about these beings coming from the stars, right? Zeta Reticuli, or wherever it may be, for different species, the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius B, wherever. There seems to be a connection to the ancient world. And it's weird because you don't want to take away from human ingenuity, but it's also like the pyramids, man, come on. How in the world do they do that? And did you ever ask those kind of questions when you were in the know? Like, did they have any information on that kind of stuff?
No, I don't know who I would have asked that. That would have been compartmented information. But since jump up to my time at Gaia, I've been there for
Gaia, yeah.
7 years. Johnny Enoch, who has programs in Gaia, a very good friend of mine, has visited Egypt a number of times. He's investigated all different anomalies and coincidences relating to how they were built. I think it's pretty much there's going to be proven that the Egyptians had help building those pyramids because they're aligned certainly along certain latitudes and longitudes, and they're lines, and they're also connected in ways to the Mayan pyramid, and so I think there is connections between extraterrestrials and these pyramids and other things on Earth, not just the pyramids.
Right.
And I think that is there are connections there, and I just wished I don't have the knowledge of the John Enoch and many other people that have studied this subject have, but I know I've spoke to Johnny. I've spent hours and hours of talking about this with Johnny overseas, and I have a new program called the Doty Chronicles that's been filmed, and Johnny was around when I was filming these in the UK. I'm going back to film more, but and so he explains it in greater details. He has books out there and things, but I believe personally, my own personal belief is that there's an ED connection. Number one, and number two, that there has been a number of civilizations on Earth over our 4 billion year history. There are some people out there, smart people out there that can put us put a civilization on this planet 900 million years ago. There's remnants of radiation that goes back thousands and thousands of years.
Absolutely.
We didn't have radiation. We didn't have radiation back then. We didn't have a bomb or anything like that. But somebody did. And so we connect that. And 900 million years ago, if you look at the particular evidence in Australia of that tree and some things in Indonesia and some things in northern Laos that connects extraterrestrial or some kind of visitation or a civilization on Earth. And I believe in that. I believe in that 100%. And I also believe that at some point, probably during that same time period, there was life on Mars, life like we have on Mars. And I strongly believe in that. And there's some things I learned while I'm in that I can't go in great details about. But remote viewing, I've been involved with remote viewing people. I'm not a remote viewer, but other people have. And they can remote view thousands and thousands of years, and they see things that can connect to a civilization on Mars. So that's the way I see it.
It is look at what we just discovered. They just discovered ice reservoirs on Mars that could sustain, if melted, could cover Mars in about a meter's worth of water. So the signs are all there, right? It's like the dominoes are being set up for us to not only change our history books, but also to change our understanding of our place in the cosmos. I have to ask, you know, do you think that there is a disclosure agenda happening in front of our eyes?
I think disclosures occurred over years. Nobody wants to believe it because it's not official. Just because you
Right.
don't hear it from the government, people don't believe it. Or
Right.
people like myself talk about it and they'll say, well, prove it. Well, you know, yeah, I have to break into the filing cabinets and vaults in the Pentagon and other places. But other people have told their stories and people don't want to talk about it, or don't believe it. But I think we've had a slow disclosure over a period of years. Now, official disclosure is when the government comes out and says, yep, Roswell really happened. You know, we've had these other crashes and we've had contacts and so forth. Well, I think that's going to happen. There's a disclosure draft that circulated around members of the Senate. And I'm a member of a group called Advanced Working Group that is more aligned with the Senate than the House. But this draft, which is sensitive, it wasn't classified per se, was a suggestion on how disclosure should be presented.
So is this is this the Disclosure Act of 2023?
No,
or at least pertaining to it?
It's just a outline of how disclosure should happen. The Schuler Amendment, Senate Amendment S-2226, which was to the National Defense Authorization Act, never made it. A washed out version of it is in there, that means virtually nothing. There's so many exceptions to that. Yeah, they gutted everything. Anyways, no, this is just an outline of how somebody created it and passed it around. And the first part of this suggested disclosure would be historical. You got to tell American people exactly how we got involved in the subject of UFOs. Now, it goes back to 47. Now, I understand people are going to argue that we knew about it in 41 and 33 and during the First World War.
And I'm sorry again to interject, but I've always said this, Rick. We are going to have to meet the government and military halfway on this to get advancement, because if we go in pointing fingers and threatening jail time, like there's got to be some sort of amnesty project or amnesty program, plus we're gonna have to meet them halfway on some of these things. So I like you said, people are gonna argue, but we're gonna have to work with them, not against them.
Exactly. And I think this draft would be a start. It's going to go back to 47, talk about what happened then and on up. It's not going to give all the details. It's not going to disclose sensitive compartmented information or special access programs. It's not going to do any of those things because there's laws against that. But it's going to let the American people know, in fact, yeah, we have had contact with extraterrestrials. We've had crashes. We've had crafts. We had bodies, but not going into any details about where or when or how. But I think that's a start.
Because the only problem I foresee with something like that is, so say Trump, for instance, gets back into office and he comes out and he's the president who says all this. Well, 50% of the country is not going to believe him just because he's Trump, right? And then if Joe Biden gets elected, he's the one who does it. Well, 50% of the country, maybe even more, are going to say he lost his mind officially. So, they're going to have to bring a little evidence to the table.
I think in the draft there are some things that they're going to present. So I think one of the things they suggested is the recovery film.
That'd be perfect.
Recovery film. some other things. But then again, of course, regardless of what you give the American people or the world, there's going to be a million questions asked, and there's going to be a million things demanded. But they got to do this in a very structured way, because they don't want to, number one, disclose classified information, current projects. They don't want to disclose sources or methods, but they have to convince the American people, just exactly what you said, that what we're saying, what the government is saying, is in fact factual. And so they have to present something that convinces the American people, because, like you said, I'm apolitical, even though I have a degree in political science, but I teach. I don't know if you know, I'm a teacher now.
Yeah,
I teach
so
online.
you told
Teach
me.
advanced math online, and so I'm apolitical. I don't like to get in arguments or even discuss politics. But that's a good point. What you're saying is, if Trump gets in there, he's going to say one thing, and people already think he's deranged, and he's other people say he's a habitual liar, and there's all sorts of negativity. But
Right.
48% of American people would vote for him right now. So, go figure that. And Biden, on the other hand, is he's senile. That's
Very
proven,
much. It's apparent.
so much. He can't remember what he said, and
No,
he can't.
yeah. No, no
So
offense.
that, and
Of course.
no,
But,
no offense.
like after a speech is done, he turns around and it takes him like 4 or 5 minutes to figure out which way to go, and he just like bobs around and weaves like a shell in Mario Kart until he figures his way off the stage. It's honestly embarrassing.
Yeah, there's a Secret Service agent that wrote a manuscript that he wanted published, and he's getting a hell of a. I know the guy really well, and he was actually an Air Force intelligence officer before he became a Secret Service agent, and he wants to talk about all the secrets that are occurring in the White House about Biden having to be led around. He can't remember where his living quarters are, and all these things that the White House and the
Right.
government's trying to keep.
It makes more sense on why cocaine was found at the White House, because the leader of the free world is being led around the house. His son, who is again, we're not going to get into politics here. We'll skip that whole thing. But you're exactly right. So it's going to be a problem. So what I think has to happen is someone we all trust comes out and does this. Someone who has a high position of power and someone who we trust. I don't know who that could be, but and maybe none of the maybe this Vivek guy. I know he's really right wing, but Vivek Ramsway. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But he's really sharp. And if he could get in office, and I think he could be a real contender for someone who brings this information forward. He's a young buck. That's what we need right now. Is we need to get these more geriatric members of Congress and the Senate out, get these younger people in, because the world is the world is literally changing around us every single day, and we have people in Congress that were around when computers didn't exist. Like that, guys, come on. But back to you. So with Gaia, with Gaia, what do you got going on? While we wrap up, I would love to have many more conversations with you. This is just scratching the surface, but what's you said you're shooting the Doty Chronicles. Can you give us a brief overview what that is and what people can expect from it and what you're doing with Gaia?
Yeah, the Doty Chronicles is a incidents that I knew about or were investigated during my time in intelligence, or information that I gathered from other sources. For instance, a Navy admiral who has contributed a lot of information for the Doty Chronicles, and I'm going to eventually do about 30 of them, maybe even more than that, and where I sit in front of the camera explaining an incident that happened while I was in intelligence during my intelligence career.
Ooh,
That's the Doty Chronicles.
that's
There's going to
amazing.
be there's about 6 or 8 out right now. I'm going to make up to 30, probably more than that. And then Gaia, I have over 100 episodes of Gaia right now, and I'm going to start filming the spring episodes for Cosmic Disclosure with Emery Smith beginning next month. So I have those two things going on. I'm still trying to write a book. I've written a book. It was written, but I submitted it for approval, and they took about half of it out, telling me I can't write, I can't disclose it. But
So
I
this is
challenged that.
This is that same process that like Grush has to go through, right? The Dobser.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've rewritten some of it, and but the problem with that method or that system is a lot of the information I'm talking about is already out there in the public, and I'm just saying it over again, and they're saying no, you can't say it because it's classified. Well, it's already out there in the public, so
Right.
why can't I say it in the book? So, anyways, I got a really pretty good attorney. Costs a lot of money, but he's pushing at it. He's a Washington-based attorney, and he knows the ins and outs of this. And so hopefully I can get this approved here in the next month and a half, 2 months, and it would be published by the middle of summer, probably beginning or middle of summer.
Yeah,
So,
and then you get that the documentary that's coming out. So
yeah, there's a documentary. It was made by a production company out of Los Angeles. We started it back in 2019, but because of the COVID, we had to delay it for a year in filming, and it's all about Area 51, inside and outside. We have some very good sources of information, people talking about things that, and it's going to really bring out the phonies, because the people who claim to have been there and claim to work there, this documentary is going to prove that they didn't work there, because we have the entry control logs for the Nellis Test and Training Range from January 1st, 1979 to December 31st, 1990. Every single human being that worked in that test range, Area 51, Papoose, and other places around there. There's other is on that. And so people who claim, "Hey, I worked there and I didn't," why is your name on this?
Right.
And then, of course, we're going to go through some confrontations where we did with people who claimed they worked there, and asking them questions about, okay, what does ABCD mean? No, I don't know. What is cipher lock, and and other things that you would have to know? Or what does the stripes mean? What is the encode decode system? Things like that unless you work there, you would know.
It's basically, it's separating the wheat from the chaff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's absolutely genius. And the ability that you have that's just really cool that you have that document, and you also have the knowledge of the base, so that you can kind of wean out the people that you don't even have to waste your time with them. If they can't answer these 3 basic questions about working there, then boom, on to the next, right? So that saves you so much time and effort. So yeah, that's does this documentary have a name yet? Does it?
No, here's one of the problems we have. When we started filming it, we asked permission from the commander of Nellis Test and Training Range, a general out of Nellis Air Force Base, and he gave the company, the film company, authorization to film. But there's a lot of restrictions that they gave to us, and one of the restrictions was we couldn't film within a certain distance from the perimeter. Well, we filmed some things, and we got caught filming them, and they took the film away from us, and we had to get it back, and we had to go to federal court, and so there's a legal problem there. But I think we've settled. I think the production company has settled most of that. So I don't think that there's going to be a problem. But it's going to be we had a couple different names about it. It's going to be the real story about Area 51, something to that effect, because we have the former chief of security for the entire test range on camera talking about things. He doesn't go into great details about classification or classified things, but he does talk about UFOs. He does talk about UFOs. And when we have the commander, now the chief of security was a civilian. The commander was a full bird colonel, and he was in charge of S2, and he's still alive, and we have him, and he's going to talk about S2. He can't talk about what goes on in S2, but he can say that everything in S2 was not made on this earth. We got it from someplace else. But he's also talking about all the phony people who claim to work there, that he knows that he didn't work there. And like I said,
so this is going to shed
4 letters and ask him what these 4 letters meant. Everybody that worked at Papoose knew what these 4 letters meant. And they knew exactly the procedures, the encode and decode and card system to get in there. And it didn't have anything to do with the hands that Lazar. That is something else.
Right. And I can't wait to see this, because it's now, is this going to be coming out through Gaia or a different?
No. It's going to become through Netflix or Tubi, some other.
Okay. Well,
no, it's not Gaia.
Yeah, keep me posted on that, because I would love to get my hands on an early copy and write a review up for our website and do a spoiler-free review and promote it for you guys, because that's a big project, and that's gonna make some waves in the community, and I can't wait to see that. But Richard, Rick, thank you so much for doing this today, taking the time out of your day to sit with me, have this conversation. And I really look forward to having more conversations with you, because, dude, you're really just a down-to-earth guy and someone who's really easy to talk to. And there's more questions I have for you, but we're already at the past 2-hour mark, so I'll probably end it here for now. But it's safe to say that I would love to have you back on.
Well, thank you, Tyler. It was fun being on your show, and I would be glad to come back at the next invitation.
Yeah, we could and we can get more into like I said, past the surface and start really digging into some of these certain cases and the validity of one versus the other, because you're very, very, very knowledgeable when it comes to these kind of things. So, and keep doing what you're doing, Rick. I think you're a tremendous asset to the community and to the truth that's about to be revealed. So With that being said, guys, make sure to like, share, subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave the show a review. It's free, and it helps us with our algorithm and getting to wider, bigger audiences. And with that being said, you know what it is. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Richard Doty, for being here again. We couldn't have done it without you today. And this is a really, this one I got to cross off my bucket list. So for me, it means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.